We have ourselves a refreshed Kia EV6 and they made it look angry. It looks so much angrier than the outgoing model, but I do think it is an upgrade overall. It definitely connects it with the rest of the lineup. As we talked about, small LEDs with some thicker LEDs at the very end point of those LEDs. That's what's happening in the front and rear end graphics in this case. We're going to compare it to the front, side, and rear and the interior of the current EV6. I'm going to show you exactly what is new here. Before we do that, let's have a look at what's new when it comes to the spec and tech from this article from Car and Driver. We have a new battery pack. I think that's the biggest change here. It's refreshed reveal for Korea, which is going to be the exact same model that we're going to get here in the United States. Kia sleek looking electric crossover gets cooler headlights and a new bigger battery, which should improve its range. At least I would hope so. That would be the whole point with a new bigger battery. It increases from 77.4 kilowatt hours to 84 kilowatt hours, which should give this an estimated range close to 330 miles compared to its current 303 miles. You also have a lightly revised interior. We're going to have a look at that and compare that to see if we can see any differences in the interior. There's one big change, which is pretty obvious. The Car and Driver here, they put the dual motor all-wheel drive wind model through a 75 mile per hour highway fuel economy route, and it went 230 miles. And the front end here is, of course, the biggest design. This is a proper, again, a facelift, not a butt lift, I guess you could call it, because there's not a lot of new things going on in the rear end when it comes to the key graphics. A couple of changes to the bumpers. You have new angular C-shaped LED running lights that wraps around the main lighting unit. On the back of the car, the taillights remains a swooping shape, but here again, we have a thin LED. At the very end point of that LED, we need to have some sort of square or triangle. In this case, we do have a triangle, which is something that Kia is adding to every single car, and I do think it looks good. It looks robotic. It doesn't necessarily look emotional or automotive, but it still looks good, and it also connects the entire lineup. Updated front and rear bumper as well. The updated version gets a more sophisticated panoramic curved display. I think that's a quote from Kia themselves. We're not entirely sure what exactly the differences are when it comes to the gauge cluster and the infotainment screen. It looks very similar to the one that we have now. With the digital cluster and infotainment screens are housed behind a single curved piece of glass, which doesn't feel exciting anymore. I want to see something new. You have a new steering wheel, an updated wireless charging pad to better secure your phone, a fingerprint authentication system, a new infotainment system that adds wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and you can expect to see all of these changes pretty much in the US version, which will go on sale who knows when, pretty soon probably. So let's jump into Photoshop here. Quick little video today of the new EV6. Up top we do have, of course, the old one. Down low we do have the brand new facelifted EV6, and I do think I would say maybe it is an improvement. I'm not entirely sure yet. I think I need to see this in real life, because I think this had already a very, very modern looking front face of the EV6 up here, with this line here and very unique headlight designs. We still have the tiger nose intact here in the front end, and I also like the GT's lower section with these fins here sticking up in the middle, being body colored. And we have these LEDs that I feel like this just came out like yesterday, and now they have a brand. We're gonna scratch this completely and go in, do something crazy, a little bit more robotic, as I said, more product designy. But it still has. We're gonna look at see that more in a side view. It still has this super slanted dip or curvature going, like crashing down into the ground. I think this curvature is just too big of a curvature, but it is an EV, so they need to think about, you know, the efficiency here, and the proportions is definitely EV proportions here. And when I see this big curvature in combination with these new graphics, I think maybe I actually prefer the old graphics here, because they feel like they were more suitable for this, again, this big curve that we have going, dipping, crashing down into the ground. But as you can see, we have the new Kia design language here with the LEDs. Do we have the tiger nose intact with the EV? I'm not sure. Do we? Or did they just remove the tiger nose? for the new facelift. I'm not sure. I can't really see the tiger nose here. We do have some dimples here, but we don't have any dimples up top in this area. So maybe I think they're slowly moving away from the tiger nose, because it definitely did its job back in 2006. When it was introduced, to create a clear identity for Kia, and it's definitely done that. Now we have these LEDs. We still have this line sticking into the fender, like we have right here in the current version as well. But now we have a much more static looking front fascia, and as I said, a lot angrier looking with these LEDs, where you have thin LEDs stretching, going the distance, and then at the very end you do have these thicker pieces in every single end point of these big LEDs. Even down here in this curvature, you can see that it gets a little bit thicker down here, and we have the main headlight being this piece. Not sure if we can call this could we call this a bumper headlight? Probably, because it sits pretty low here in the overall height of the front end. You also have a new design for the lower section. It still looks good. I think it looks equally good as the old one, because these stick out, protruding from the front of the face. Now they have this angle instead of having this angle like we have in the current one. It now angled a little bit more, less dramatic, I would say, than the current EV6. Still looks good, and I do like that we have the fins intact here, being body color. Looking at the side view, not a lot of changes in the side view. As I said, this is a proper facelift, focusing mainly on the face of the car. But I want to show you the proportions here, what I talked about. See this huge curvature, this big dip here. I made a redesign of the EV6 back in the day, a couple of years ago, when I turned this into, I do believe I turned it into maybe like a hatchback, or more of a sedan-like style, where I stretch these proportions out, and it does have a lot of potential. We'll still have the same lines in the body, of course. I do like this line that goes into the taillights, creating this nice flow into the side view, and then have a clear connection to the lower piece in the front end. New wheel designs as well, and I'm going to show you my favorite wheels here with this new EV6 in the rear view. I do believe that one was equipped with very cool looking wheels. Other than that, not a lot of changes here for the EV6. Definitely EV proportions for this car. Now look at the rear view here. The GT line, we do have a couple of changes to the bumper, the rear bumper. Just some small tweaks, and in this case I do prefer the old one here. I'm not totally sure, because I don't think I like how this piece in the new one has, it looks like it has like a weird thinner, it gets thin here and then into thicker again. It creates a very weak point in this area for the graphics in the rear, while at the previous, or the current one, would just have a big black diffuser cutting in pretty high up into the bumper, and we have sort of a diffuser diaper down here that is body colored, but it doesn't have any weak points like we have in this area as we just talked about. But these are my favorite wheels for the new EV6. I do think these are actually the production version wheels, and if they are, they look proper, and they definitely plant stick are probably not going to help the range by having what could these be, maybe 20-inch wheels like this instead of having the 18s or whatever they have on the standard EV6. Now look at the rear graphics here. They did change up the graphics again. This still feels so modern that it feels like it came out yesterday, with these LEDs right here, which I actually like. I think it looks very cool and very unique. But since Kia is completely changing the graphic all around their cars, we need to do something about this. So what they did, again, coming back to these thin LEDs. So look at this. We have another thin LED going right here. And then what happens in the very end point? Yes, we do have a thicker piece of some geometric shape. And in this case, it is a triangle they decided to go with there. So I think it looks cleaner maybe to have this type of LEDs in the back, but the lower section for me definitely prefer. In this case, I'm going to go with the current pre-facelift EV6. Now looking at the interior here, the biggest change, I think it's pretty obvious. You can see what the biggest change is here. It is going to be the steering wheel. And I do think the old steering wheel, this looked pretty dated to me. It just has this old vibe to it with this design. Even though it was a very comfortable steering wheel, I had the EV6 when it first came out for a week and just drove around in it in Florida. It was very nice, super chill and comfortable car. We have the two infotainment screen and the gauge cluster here, which looks to be pretty much the same as we have here. However, this angle now, you see this angle on the end points of the infotainment screen, which I think is a good thing, because how are you going to style a static glass rectangle? You can't just, the only thing you can do is just add some angles to the very end points, but that is now gone and it became more static in the interior as well. As you can see, even though we do have some corners here that are chamfered in the very end corners, it looks, other than that, the layout looks pretty similar to what we have, except for, of course, the new steering wheel here, which I think is an improvement. This steering wheel looks way more modern than the current EV6 steering wheel, and I think it looks very nice. The center portion here, let's see if we can see any changes to what's going on in the center portion. I do think it's actually the exact same, except again for the wireless charging pad here, which they improved so the phone doesn't slide around too much. I do love this detail of the EV6. That's something I remember it being very clean, and this panel with this slight upswing here, just the housing for the button itself is very beautifully done by Kia. Attention to detail there again, and this area seems to be exactly the same as what we have in the new EV6. So that's a refreshed EV6. I do think it's an upgrade overall, even though the rear bumper is probably something that I would not want to change from the current EV6. But it's going to be interesting to see if the changes look different in real life when it's sold here in the US, whenever that happens.